What's up everybody, man, back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be re-reviewing Shin Godzilla to celebrate the new re-release in theaters with the updated 4K remaster of Shin Godzilla, and we'll be answering the question, does Shin Godzilla hold up 9 years later? Let's get into it. I can't believe that 9 years later, here we are once again talking about Shin Godzilla. Does anybody else get the new cavity color Shin Godzilla shirt? I think it is so freaking cool. It's one of my favorite cavity color shirts they've done. I love the artwork on it. Kamata-kun double Shinagawa-kun, which is cool because he barely gets any love. And then Shin Godzilla himself, such a dope shirt, made to celebrate the new re-release. And that's right, Shin Godzilla is currently in theaters. The new re-release of Shin Godzilla is out right now, and it's the updated 4K remaster of Shin Godzilla done by G-Kids as opposed to Funimations, who handled the original US release, and this G-Kids version features updated subtitles. So today we're going to dive into all of that, talk about some of the changes to the movie, because there were some changes. Actually, it's even a little different than I first realized, because technically, after the theatrical release of Shin Godzilla, they actually swapped out one of the shots and then updated a few of the VFX on other shots. So in a way, this is the first time we've got to experience the new updated shots in theaters, and I do believe that they used the updated shots, but there are some other changes that we'll get into. And I just want to talk about how the movie holds up 9 years later. I cannot talk about Shin Godzilla without obviously acknowledging the fact that Shin Godzilla changed my life, completely altering the trajectory of where I was going and who I was becoming, and so this movie means a whole lot to me. This movie means so much. It is the movie that really kickstarted this channel and pushed me down the direction that I went down, and this is the path we've been on for basically 10 years, as the first Shin Godzilla video I ever released on the channel was on September 26th, 2015, not terribly long after that, on February 3rd, 2016, I did my first ever Shin Godzilla and Godzilla in general news and updates, and it really, that's what changed everything. So I owe a lot to this movie, and it's very special to me for that reason. So am I biased? Absolutely, big time, yes, but beyond that, I just really like this movie. It's also a movie I'll say I have seen a lot. I've seen this movie a lot of times, more times than probably most people on the planet, way more times than I can count, and also, this wouldn't be my first time seeing the 4K version, as I own the 4K version. It's playing back there. It's not the 4K remastered version, but it's the one that released originally with Shin Godzilla on that 4K set way back in 2016 or 17. So I've owned the Japanese 4K and have watched it a few times. Mostly I actually watched the Blu-ray because the Blu-ray's got the subtitles from Funimation. So yeah, I've seen Shin Godzilla a lot. Back when it came out, I watched it multiple dozens of times to work on videos, and so I'm very, very familiar with this film. I also think this was my 5th viewing of Shin Godzilla in theaters, if I'm not mistaken. I believe, and I could be mistaken, that I saw Shin Godzilla 3 times in the original release all the way back in the day, if not 4, but I can only remember 3 separate occasions going. I think I only saw it 3 times back in the day. I saw it once at the Alamo Drafthouse, I believe in 2021 or 2022. I do believe it was 2021 during November when they did a little Godzilla Fest, and then I did see it once so far at the re-release. So 5 times in theaters, and that brings us to Shin Godzilla. As for the plot, I'm sure you all know, but we'll run through it anyways. Satirizing the 3/11 disaster that shook Japan, Shin Godzilla picks up in the modern day of 2016 and sees a creature appear in Tokyo Bay. Failing to identify the threat at hand, the Japanese government is unprepared when the creature evolves and makes landfall in Kamata. After a rampage, the creature evolves again in Shinagawa, where its destruction continues. After a moment of hesitation, both from the creature and the Japanese government, the creature retreats into the ocean, and an investigation is underway into the origins of it and how to defeat it. Information comes to life that the creature is known as Godzilla, and its appearance was predicted by a man named Goro Maki, who appears to have taken his own life. As a band of governmental and scientific misfits run by Rando Yaguchi investigates the creature, it reappears in a new evolution, a nearly 400-foot tall terror twisted into a form that resembles the Godzilla we all know and love, with a far more horrific spin. His rampage is swift and devastating in one of the best sequences in the franchise's history. Things climax in Tokyo as a US bombing strike agitates Godzilla into unleashing his atomic arsenal, destroying the city and bombers. theaters. Following this, Godzilla goes into a hibernation state, leading to a frantic investigation into how to create a coagulant drug that will freeze the monster. This escalates as the US leads a UN initiative to nuke Godzilla in the heart of Tokyo. After a lot of drama, scientific explanation, and governmental bureaucracy, Yaguchi's coagulant is put to the test as Godzilla is attacked and the final battle begins. In the end, Godzilla is frozen in Tokyo, but is not done as his tail evolves into a foreboding fifth evolution, symbolizing that things are far from over. It was wonderful to be back in the theaters watching Shin Godzilla. Obviously, a Godzilla movie demands to be seen on the biggest screen possible to feel the scale and size and weight of Godzilla, and there's one shot in this movie that has stuck out to me ever since I first saw it that is just such a perfect shot in theaters, and it's that wonderful shot right after Godzilla attacks in the Midway City heading towards Tokyo, where the camera kind of pans up from the soldiers and then follows upward to Godzilla's head. It's incredible. What a great moment, showing off the massive scale of Godzilla. There's so many incredible top tier visuals that are some of my favorite visuals of the entire Godzilla series in this movie. Of course, shots like Godzilla landing here, the shot of Godzilla walking past this bridge, and my second favorite shot of the entire Shin Godzilla movie, if not my favorite shot, which it could be one of my favorite shots in the entire franchise. This shot is Godzilla finally makes it to the heart of Tokyo at night, where he's glowing red. It's perfect, it's beautiful. The whole atomic breath sequence demands to be seen in theaters. That wonderful moment where Godzilla's surrounded by the wall of fire is incredible. And then we're delivered one of my favorite other visuals, if not my favorite visual in the movie, at the end of the film, as Yaguchi looks out over Godzilla. I just feel like it perfectly symbolizes that coexistence that is Godzilla, the dichotomy between him and his city-destructive ways and humanity and the way they have to deal with him. It's just great. It's brilliant. It was just so nice to be back in theaters. It didn't hit the same way that like Godzilla Minus One did, because Godzilla Minus One stayed in theaters at a time when I had a car, and I had a lot of time to just go be in the theater and watch that movie, and I became very cozy there. Like, Godzilla Minus One felt like a second home to me in theaters. Godzilla vs. Kong felt the same way. I got to go see Godzilla vs. Kong in theaters so many times that it felt like this very safe, cozy little home for me. I guess kind of same with King of the Monsters, but to a smaller extent. Shin Godzilla, I didn't have that, as we are 10 years removed basically, and I did not get to go as many times back in the day just due to the limitations of me not having a car and also the movie not being released wide. It was a very small release. So it didn't have that same like, oh, I'm back home type quality, but what it did have is this very special, like, I can't believe I'm getting to watch this in theaters quality that really struck me during the Persecution of the Masses sequence, where I was like struck with full body chills remembering how intense and wonderful and impactful that song was for me when it came out, how incredible it was, how it was so moving and how I couldn't stop listening to it, and the gravity of that scene, watching it in theaters for the first time, washing over me as that wonderful attack sequence plays out. It really struck me again during this, and that scene I think is one of the highlights of this film, that Persecution of the Masses sequence, and it's helped by Persecution of the Masses. Shiiro Sagisu is the composer for Shin Godzilla, and while he uses a lot of Ifikube's music, and in fact a lot of music that Akira Ifukube composed and is just straight up the original tracks from early Showa films, songs like Persecution of the Masses hit on a different level in this movie. Persecution of the Masses is maybe the best song ever featured in a Godzilla movie. I know Godzilla's theme is so iconic and incredible that it's kind of hard to say that, and it's lasted and it stood the test of time, but Persecution of the Masses is an incredibly well written piece of music, and it really elevates not only that scene, but in my opinion, the whole freaking movie. It's so good. I will say, as for the re-release, the 4K quality, it never really struck me. I guess it's because, first of all, I didn't realize the film wasn't 4K back when it came out in 2016 in the US. I had no clue. I didn't know that it wasn't 4K. I assumed all movies that come out in theaters were. And because I have seen the 4K UHD home release version, which maybe this was updated, like, was it different? I don't know. I don't know if they had, like, color change or a quality change or anything. I guess I just am so used to seeing Shin Godzilla in really high quality that it didn't strike me as like, oh my god, it looks brilliant. But that doesn't mean that there aren't visuals that really benefit. Like, for instance, the visuals of this film are still so beautiful that they cannot help but be a spectacle on screen, and the 4K definitely helps that. It's still a beautiful and captivating movie, and there are things I can still really appreciate here. In particular, again, that shot where Godzilla makes it to the heart of Tokyo really stood out to me. And as far as like 4K quality, can you notice any other details in the movie? Maybe. Like, I know I had the theory back in the day, but I was working with a really low quality version of the movie, and I've never bothered to revisit that theory or update it on the channel. That theory being that a time skip happens between Yaguchi looking out over Godzilla and the final moments of the film where the tail has begun to evolve and all the creatures are coming off of it. I can say with absolute 100% certainty that the CGI model of Godzilla frozen in the background in that city does not have the critters coming off of the tail until the very next shot, when we cut to the closer up visual of Godzilla revealing what's going on with his tail. And so I'm still very certain that a big time skip happened, and with the potential Shin Godzilla sequel on the horizon, maybe it's time to revisit that theory and wonder what that means. Of course, Godzilla's frozen at the end of the film, so there'd be like a 2 to 3 year half-life on when he's gonna finally come out of that frozen state. That tail, I would assume, begins evolving towards the start, but I wouldn't think that it would take shape in the way it is until, honestly, quite some time. Those creatures aren't moving. I imagine they're moving at near imperceptible levels. You'd have to time-lapse them to see any movement, so I'm thinking that's a year in at least, if not more. And that was something that I thought was very cool about watching it in theaters. And I don't know if that's just simply because I saw it in theaters on a bigger screen so I could see it better and see Godzilla's tail better, and I was looking for it, or if it's because the 4K quality truly did help to bring that detail out, that Godzilla didn't have his final evolution until that last shot, you know? The biggest change to the movie by far was the updated subtitles, I guess, if we're ignoring the fact that they swapped out those shots, but they did that way back in the day when the home release happened in 2016, so those shots have been swapped, or 2017? Those shots have been swapped for years and years. Almost the entirety of the time we've known Shin Godzilla, we've known the updated shots. So, just saying, the biggest difference between the original release and the new one is the updated subtitles. It's actually our third iteration of Shin Godzilla subtitles. We are back to the nice dullish yellow subtitles of the original theatrical release all the way back in the day. I actually think those subtitles were a little more vibrant yellow, but we have dullish yellow subtitles with a really nice font, just want to say that. And I actually really like that. I think the yellow suits Shin Godzilla very well. I think yellow subtitles are very underrated. I know white looks a little cleaner, but yellow's a little more legible at times, and in a movie like Shin Godzilla, it kind of adds to the color palette of the film so it doesn't stand out as jarring against the movie. I think it's a very nice little thing. So I wanted to mention that. Subtitles, again, were done by, I believe, Anthony Kim, who did the Godzilla -1 translations for the Godzilla -1 theatrical release, and I believe the home release as well. And the subtitles, most importantly, and this was something that Toho advertised, restored the Japanese title cards. Now, I want to be clear. If you saw Shin Godzilla back in the day in theaters, you already saw those title cards. I believe they've swapped them out on the Blu-ray release, so on the Blu-ray release of the film done by Funimation, rather than having the Japanese text pop up on screen, you would have subtitled version representing what the Japanese text originally said. In the original release of Shin Godzilla, in the Japanese version, constantly title cards are popping up, or text cards are popping up on screen to give the name of somebody, the floor they're on, to give the title of someone's job, you know, little things that added to the satirical comedy of the film. I appreciate that they added them again, because they kind of add an overwhelming nature to the movie, where at times it's like, why do we care what this person's job title is, or why do we care what floor they're on, or what conference room they're in, you know? It just adds to satirizing the bureaucracy of Japan. I thought it was very cool that they restored those. It's similar to the original release, but a little different. In the original release, if you remember way back in theaters, it was so overwhelming. There would be title cards on the bottom. They would have subtitles on the bottom. They would have then people speaking and subtitles on the top of the screen as well for where the people are speaking. And then on the side of the screen, there'd be like a whole nother layer of subtitles at times, because sometimes the Japanese characters were speaking English, and so there's Japanese subtitles over here, there's English subtitles up here, and then there's the title card down there. It was very overwhelming. It got very cluttered, and I know it lost a lot of people. Like, I remember my parents complaining about that back in the day, and I even felt like, wow, that was really distracting. They changed that and made it a lot better for the Blu-ray release. This movie goes kind of back to the original, where there are times where it feels a little disorienting, having the dialogue go from the bottom of the screen to the top of the screen back to the bottom of the screen in like 2 lines, you know? That was a little disorienting, and it was to make room for those title cards, which come at the bottom of the screen always. So sometimes the subtitles are bumped to the top. But on the whole, it was handled much better than it was with the original release, and I think it worked really well. well. There's also some translation differences I picked up on. Now, I don't know line for line, word for word the entire script of Shin Godzilla, but what I do know is some things were changed. For instance, they alternated in this version between the phrase "do as you please" and "do as you like" as being what Maki wrote in his final moments. In the other subtitles, I believe they just pick "do as you like" and stick with it the whole time. But in this updated version, they do alternate between sometimes saying "do as you please" and other times saying "do as you like." Most noticeably for me was the change of Yaguchi's final line, "Things are still far from settled." In this new version, they change it. I don't actually remember what they change it to, but he no longer says "things are still far from settled." He says something more along the lines of like "things are only just beginning." I'll have to see the movie a second time to kind of pick up on what that subtitle change was, but there are little changes. They don't change the story of Shin Godzilla. I'd like to believe they're maybe reining in the subtitles, making them a little more accurate, but subtitling is a tricky job. It's got a lot of subjectivity to it. Sometimes one translator is going to translate a line a little differently than another, and that's what we're seeing here. Does Shin Godzilla still hold up? Well, I think my thoughts are pretty clear based on this review. Absolutely. Absolutely it does. I love this movie. I think it's fantastic. It's one of my faves. It still feels like, to me, the definitive modern Godzilla solo story for this modern age and generation. I do not think we need more solo Godzilla movies. I will say it feels a little more niche after Godzilla -1 came out and was the true classic solo Godzilla story, but it benefits from the fact that -1 was a period piece. This movie's a modern take on Godzilla. This movie radically updates Godzilla's origins, but because it does that, it does feel a little less like Godzilla. Godzilla's origins and power set is so different here that walking out of the movie, my friend, who apparently has never seen Shin Godzilla until now, was like, is that really what Godzilla's origins normally are in the Japanese version? When I said no, he's like, I thought so. I thought -1 was what his origins normally are. Yeah, mostly. So it was one of those things where -1, I think, in retrospect, makes Shin Godzilla feel a little more niche and a little more out there. It makes it feel a little less like a Godzilla movie and more like a Hideaki Anno movie. And in other ways, -1 being such a direct comparison and also a Japanese Godzilla film, the next Japanese live-action Godzilla film after Shin Godzilla, does help to amplify my awareness of some of the problems Shin Godzilla has always had. I don't think Shin Godzilla hits as hard as it once did, for a few reasons. I've seen the movie 1,000 times, so because of that, it's like I'm so familiar with it that it's hard to still blow me away with it. There's always been some issues with Shin Godzilla, always, and with the perspective of -1 and other Godzilla movies, I do think it's a little more noticeable what some of those issues are, especially because -1 has a very similar structure to Shin Godzilla, where Godzilla disappears after a big mid-movie atomic breath sequence, and then we go about 40 minutes before he shows back up. And in -1, I truly don't feel that 40 minutes at all. I truly am engaged the whole time and feel like this story's really flowing the whole way. Whereas in Shin Godzilla, it feels like we crank on the brakes for 40 minutes and it's way more noticeable. So in large part, the emotional core of Godzilla -1 being so strong makes the lack of emotional storytelling here a lot more noticeable. This movie doesn't really have emotional stakes as much as it has a little more like grand stakes, like the whole country's in danger. They're gonna blow up Tokyo with a nuke. There's different things at stake in this movie. It feels a little higher. Also, we learned that Godzilla is a little more of a global threat in this movie than he was in -1. But I would say the lack of emotional stakes does make the long stretches between action sequences a little more noticeable and a little more antsy for me. I think that's the reason Shin Godzilla doesn't have as high of a rewatch factor as some other Godzilla movies, is because a lot of Godzilla movies have either monsters sprinkled in more frequently, or they have a stronger emotional core to keep you tied over while the monsters are on break. And Shin Godzilla, if you're not really invested in the mystery and the political drama, I can understand why the second half of the movie loses some people. But I will say, the first half of Shin Godzilla, I think, is maybe the best first half of a Godzilla movie from a writer's perspective, and specifically from an editing perspective, we've ever seen. Shin Godzilla's an incredible film. I think it's fantastic. I think it's a really, really well done movie. Shin Godzilla's strengths are its modern themes, updating Godzilla's story to the modern day, keeping him relevant for a brand new generation in ways that we've not really ever seen successfully done before, while still retaining the nuclear grittier core of Godzilla. It just represents something a little different now with the Fukushima disaster. It's got incredible, wonderful music. I cannot stop praising the soundtrack for this movie. It's got really inventive ideas and a very fun stylistic approach that make the movie really out there. I saw Nobody 2 the next day after seeing Shin Godzilla, and my friend, again, who had never seen Shin Godzilla before, was like, hey, I got a question. Is that how all Japanese movies are edited? Are they all kind of that strange? And I was like, nope, that's just Hideaki Anno. And in my opinion, that's the thing that this movie really excels at, is the style. Godzilla's design has become incredibly iconic. The evolution angle makes him fresh and unique and stand out amongst his peers. Shin Godzilla really is his own thing, and everybody knows who he is. Even people who've never seen Shin Godzilla can kind of recognize Shin Godzilla as Shin Godzilla. It's pretty cool. Shin Godzilla is awesome, and I think his design, the creepy factor of it, the different factor of it, that amazing long tail that's crazy, the new powers, the red glow coming from him, that's all amazing. I think all of that really represents the style that this movie has in a really cool way. The film's strong visual language and rapid editing do a great job of creating the illusion of fast-paced action, even during boardroom sequences. In particular, the first half of the movie I think really excels with creative camera angles and editing tricks to keep you engaged throughout that. It's really cool. And the film still features what is perhaps the high point of Godzilla action to date. That wonderful return sequence. Godzilla showing back up at sea until the atomic breath sequence is over, I still do believe is like the best Godzilla portion we ever get of Godzilla himself. It's just the pinnacle of Godzilla destruction. I wish he was a little more actively engaged. I loved that -1 reintroduced that angle of Godzilla, having him actively go out of his way to slash at buildings and strike through them with some malice, whereas in this movie Shin Godzilla just kind of walks aimlessly until he's provoked into action. Either way, that whole stretch of this movie is so incredible. It's got amazing Godzilla destruction, wonderful stakes, great music, it brings in that classic Ifukube Godzilla theme. It's just really pure, it's really cool, and then the atomic breath sequence is the best sequence that's ever happened in a Godzilla movie. It continues to raise the stakes, it makes Godzilla's atomic breath fresh after 62 years! 62 years of Godzilla movies, and this one found the way to raise the bar to the point where every filmmaker who has come since has been trying to do something like that. Like, every filmmaker has felt the weight of that atomic breath sequence who has followed. I think Takashi Yamazaki does the closest job at recapturing that. Takashi Yamazaki's rivals it in a very different way, in a very emotional way, because that's obviously what that scene excels at. It's not necessarily the explosion in Ginza that's so amazing as much as what happens during that scene, especially with Shikishima, whereas in this movie, it's just the pure spectacle and incredibly well done, godly experience of watching that atomic breath reveal. It's so freaking good. The purple also looks fantastic. Being back in theaters really helped the colors pop in this movie. It was great. I could continue praising Shin Godzilla forever. I think it's a fantastic movie. I'm sure this is not the last time I'll review it. Clearly, 10 years in and I'm still finding new ways to review this movie. It's definitely not the last time we'll be talking about it on the channel, and I'm really excited to re-enter a new Shin Godzilla era. In honor of this re-release of Shin Godzilla, I'm going to be going back and doing some Shin Godzilla Explains that I never did get around to in the first place, including a new Godzilla What If series I want to launch, so please stay tuned for all of that. If there's any Shin Godzilla Explains you want to hear about, you can comment those down below. If I've already covered them, I'll just let you know that, hey, I've already covered that topic. If not, I very well might make it into a video, because I've got some Shin Godzilla Explains I want to work on, and I've got some fun Shin Godzilla What Ifs I want to work on, and I'm very excited to keep talking about this movie that I love so much with you guys. Nearly 10 years later, I'm going to give Shin Godzilla a nearly 10 out of 10. I'm going to give this movie a 9 out of 10. The only thing I'll dock it for is just the pacing of the second act, which I think is a very fair criticism. And other than that, I think that this movie really does hold up. The themes, the allegory, the special effects, maybe not Oscar worthy, but they're still very cool. The style in particular, and the wonderful reimagining of Godzilla for the modern day. I think it demands to be seen on the big screen. If you haven't seen Shin Godzilla yet, what the heck are you doing, man? Get out there and go see this movie. And if you have seen it, comment down below and let me know what your favorite memories of Shin Godzilla are from over the years. Thank you guys all for watching. I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. It is through the support of the patrons on Patreon that I'm able to continue to make videos like this for you. If you want to get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more, please consider supporting the Patreon. And if that's not your thing, please consider supporting as a channel member. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man out.